Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Chris Lethem, and this is another episode of The Economy and You. Last week's guest was Senator Chen Oakland. She was awesome. She had a lot to talk about with respect to housing issues and the homeless problem. Today's guest, we're going to sort of go into a different tact. We're going to start talking a little bit about, going back to talking about technology. Today's guest is Rick Hurst. Rick Hurst is a software instructor, or programming instructor, and a software developer. And I wanted to bring him on because he's doing something that I think is a sort of a business model that would work very well for other people in the software development industry. And welcome to the show, Rick.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You're a guy that came out of Silicon Valley?
Escaped Silicon Valley.
You escaped
Yes.
Silicon Valley, okay, and then you sort of ended up here in this little rock out in the middle of the South Pacific.
This was wonderful.
And I wanted to kind of get a little bit about your backstory, okay? You're obviously not from California.
Correct.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from England. So I was in the north in Manchester. That's where I was born. Traveled around England quite a bit and then ended up over in Las Vegas.
Okay, because at some point they told you to leave England.
Yeah, they kicked me out and then I had to find somewhere else to lay my head.
And Vegas, of course, seemed like the opportune place to go.
Yes, it did. And so what happened, I was in Vegas. I was doing general web development stuff, you know, as web developers do. They just reach out to clients and build websites, this kind of stuff. And then after a while, I started to get a little better at it. And then I thought, okay, I can do Silicon Valley. I can raise my game. And I kind of moved over there because, you know, I went there to check out a conference, and I spoke to a couple of people, and I said, can you give me any advice on what I should do about, you know, excelling my career? And they said, just move to San Francisco. I'm like, is that it? And I was like, okay, so I did. And I just packed up everything, went to, literally with no money, just went to San Francisco, and within a day, literally within a day, after making a few phone calls, made some phone interviews, and I was working. And before I know it, I was with everyone else with the, you know, the high Silicon Valley salaries and all this kind of stuff. And I was doing really, really well, a couple of years. And so I did development there, focused on the front end, and that's how I ended up there.
And so, and you were part of the HTML5 user group.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? What does that entail?
Well, I'm no longer involved with it because I'm here, but Peter Lubbers is doing a really good job over there with Google and those guys. And what they do is they have it's like a big meetup, and they just get everyone that's interested in anything to do with HTML5, bring on a really good speaker, and present some like mini talks and lightning talks. And everyone just gets around and eats pizza, and if you're at Yelp and these other places, they get drunk because they have beer on tap, which is really cool.
Which is great, yes, yes.
It keeps people there. You know, even if they're not interested in HTML5, they come anyway. You know, so it's quite a lot of fun, and yeah, I think it was doing a great job of building community out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, so how long ago did you decide to migrate from Silicon Valley or from the Bay Area back over here to Hawaii?
Well, I'm relatively new here. I mean, I've only literally about 4 or 5 months at the most I've been here, so I'm really new. But prior to moving here, I was already doing what I'm doing now, which is remote software training. So I spend my time, I've got a computer in front of me, I'm presenting via WebEx and these type of systems, and helping people coach online. So I was doing training, and I was working with a company called Maracana at the time, and they got bought by Twitter, and they kind of migrated into another company and so forth, but they still do that.
They still do training?
They still do training, and they do lots of different training.
This is all under Twitter?
No, Maracana, sorry, that was my fault. Maracana was a company that got swallowed up by Twitter.
Okay.
And what happened is now that's Twitter University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all very interesting.
So Twitter U.
Yeah, Twitter University is doing all, that's very good. They should use that, shouldn't they? Twitter University is doing some really awesome things with Marco and a few other people out there, and Simeon. And what's happened is a branch of this retained the trainers. Called The New Circle, and now they're developing training courses and doing all this stuff. And I work a lot, very closely with them, and I do all the remote stuff. Okay,
so now working with this organization,
yes,
they sort of shop you out to other enterprise organizations.
Yeah, so there's a lot of freelance trainers like myself that will do online training and in-person training, and New Circle is like a group of people that kind of organize all that logistic nightmare, so we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Now, when you're training, when you're doing training with a group of people, I imagine you're not just training one-on-one. You're training with a group of developers usually.
Yeah. So sometimes you have a group of say 20 people.
Right.
It does feel very one-on-one, hands-on coaching, because what I'm doing is I'm swapping the screen and say there's all these people being trained right now. I can then look at your screen and say, oh, Chris, you're doing it wrong. and all these kind of helpful statements, and
Yes.
showed you how to do things and this kind of stuff.
So this goes to the adage of if you give a person a program, you frustrate them for a day, but if you teach them how to write a program, you frustrate them for life.
I think that's
Yes, that's a
what
wonderful idea.
That's what my job is. Yeah, frustrating people.
That's right, keep people frustrated. So now you're doing this, and you like it. Obviously, you like it.
Yeah, I think it's too difficult to do if you don't really love it.
Yeah.
There's too much.
Now, how long does a normal session last when you're training?
Oh, I did one this morning.
Okay.
And it was about 3.5 hours.
About 3.5 hours.
Yeah. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's pretty intense because I'm dealing, I mean, it's not where I'm just pointing at slides, like
Right.
a lot of these online training you would have seen a few years back. This is, I'm coding with them, they're coding with me, and I'm working with them one-on-one and jumping between the people.
So now
Very intense.
are they emulating your code? In other words, you code something and they sort of write the same code?
Yes. I give them a mini task. I say, just try and do this. And they do their best, and I go back in and say, syntax is a little bit off here, and this is why this doesn't quite work. Basically just correcting, that's the objective.
Right, yes, so, case sensitivity, of course, is...
Things like that.
Yeah, right, yeah. Now, you program primarily, you're doing HTML5, you're doing JavaScript, but you're a full-stack developer.
I am, yes.
So, now, not everybody knows what a full-stack developer is.
Okay.
Because that's a sort of it's a sort of a code word used in the development world, right? So.
Generally meaning jack of all trades, master of none. That's
Yes.
what most people think of. But I also, I know we're joking with that, I feel it's a little unfair to full stack developers, who have had to develop these skills out of need. They don't have they've got an app, they don't have a database guy. So guess what they do? Film up a book on Mongo and they learn it.
Yes.
And I think that there's a market for people actually trying to get good at as many things as they can and just do as much as they can and get as skilled as they can. A lot of the skill sets overlap. So once you get good at one thing, you find yourself being good at something else.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also important, too, if you want to be an architect. For example, if you're going to be the guy that frames out the initial solution, you really have to have an understanding of all the various component pieces.
Oh, for sure. Really
in order
helps.
to essentially to be able to frame out the application in a way that's going to be supportable and usable.
Yeah.
And of course there's some things that are sort of fashion issues, right, in programming. Believe it or not, when you're writing code, there are things that sort of come in and out of fashion. So one of the things one of the things that we talk about in the programming world today is different frameworks.
Yes.
Right. So we've got frameworks. In the old days, we rewrote JavaScript by hand. Okay. Now we use JavaScript frameworks because of that provides some level of cross-browser compatibility. For example, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, your phones. I don't even know what browsers are being used on phones these days. It's mind-boggling. So you have people who do nothing but create frameworks that provide for that cross-browser compatibility.
Yeah, and it feels like people are creating frameworks every day.
They keep coming up.
Last time I looked, I think there was 52. 52 frameworks.
That's crazy.
Really, I don't want to be too critical of frameworks, but all they're doing is they're separating concerns, which is a good thing. But I think what happens is people start developing code, and then before they know it, they kind of compartmentalize everything and organize it and go, I built a framework, let's promote that. And everyone starts promoting their own frameworks, and it's a bit of a mess right now. A few have come to the forefront, like Angular, Backbone, but these are the main players right now.
Well, yeah, Angular and Backbone. Now, both of these, I think, use sort of the double curly braces to identify component pieces. Or?
Yes, they all have their own syntax.
Yeah. I mean, the issue with programming, and I know not everybody out there is a programmer. So but when we talk about programming and being good at programming. And being able to market yourself as somebody who can do programming, one of the things you have to do is pick your battles. You have to figure out which ones are you going to spend your time and energy learning. Because if you make a bad choice, you've spent a lot of time learning something for naught.
I did exactly that. Before I went to San Francisco, I was building websites and stuff, and then I focused on Ruby on Rails. And the choice was just a selfish choice. I just looked at all the salaries and thought, Ruby on Rails, that's me.
That's the one that pays the best.
I'm doing that.
Okay.
And got involved in Ruby on Rails, and that's kind of how it all started. But ultimately, then I saw with the power of JavaScript. I mean, JavaScript's been around forever, right?
It is, and it's such
the way people do it now.
Well, it is, but it's such a quirky language. It's unlike any other programming language out there. And for people who are learning JavaScript, and who've done other programming language, they come into JavaScript and they just scratch their head and go, I don't know what this language is. The constructs of it, it doesn't, it's not, there's nothing strongly typed in here. Everything's sort of loosey-goosey.
That's right, enough for it to hang yourself, yeah?
I can build anything with JavaScript, because it can be anything I want it to be. Just create an object, And I'll give it some methods, and after the fact, what's called prototyping, right? You sort of prototype methods and attach them on to your object as you go along, and say, well, you know what? I want it to do something new. It doesn't do that now, but I can make it do that.
It's very flexible, and a lot of people that come from proper programming languages don't like the lack of structure. There's enough rope to hang yourself there, and it's too flexible. However, I would say that even though JavaScript has been around forever, and you can do that, I think what's happening, even outside of the frameworks, people are using convention and more structured code to make it more manageable now, and people are using conventions, module patterns, these kind of things that are a little more advanced to just ensure that we are maintaining structure and organization to our code.
Yeah,
so I think JavaScript's getting more professional.
It is getting more professional, but and I would say also jQuery, which is another framework.
Library.
A library. Okay, we won't call it a framework. We'll call it a library. Okay, so
only because if you don't, you could have programmers go on your code. It's a library.
It's a library. The interesting thing about jQuery is that it does allow you to access HTML elements. Now, if people don't know what HTML is, and I don't expect everybody to know programming or HTML, but HTML is essentially the elements within an HTML page or a web page.
It's a markup. It's a skeleton of your website.
That's right. All the component pieces are made up of HTML, and that sort of gives it sort of a predefined idea of what your web page is going to look like.
Can I rephrase that last bit? It's not what it's going to look like, because this is an important paradigm actually with the whole of HTML5 issue, is that you're separating your markup, your structure, and your semantic meaning, so your navigation elements, your footer elements that mentally mean things from how they're going to look with CSS.
Right.
So we have our markup, we have our unobtrusive CSS and styles, and our unobtrusive JavaScript.
Well, the reason I say because every browser has a built-in CSS.
It does, called the user agent style sheet, that you have to override, otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy.
You just drive yourself crazy because nothing will ever look the same across your browser.
That's right.
So the first thing you do is you override that.
Yeah, with very popular ones are things like normalize. But I like the harder reset style sheets that just get rid of everything.
Yes, reset.
I do it myself.
Gets rid of it, yeah, and then you start all over again.
Yes.
Right. But this is sort of, and I know for people that are non-technical, when you have you have different browsers, and you apply HTML elements, they all have their sort of beginning look and feel, but it can be different across every browser.
Correct. Yeah.
And so what you want to do is kind of use a reset to sort of say, hey, never mind what that user agent style sheet looks like.
Yeah.
This is what I want you to follow.
They're trying to be helpful, but unfortunately they all have different ideas of what helpful is. Like one would say, the header, we just have this much margin, and another browser goes, I think it should be like this. And they can't agree, so there's no default style sheet.
That's right.
Which is frustrating.
Well, and then of course, your stuff might look great in Internet Explorer, but of course, Internet Explorer doesn't follow what they call the W3C standard, right?
It's getting better.
It's getting better.
I can't Internet Explorer bash. I'm known for that, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to.
They're going to do that today. It's not PC. That's politically correct to bash. And also, I've heard Microsoft is intending to come out with a new browser.
Yeah, they're always incrementing these browsers. I mean, they're just firing these iterations out so fast. Now, we're on Chrome 42, 43 right now.
It's crazy.
It's mental.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about Chrome, though, is you will never download a patch for Chrome or an update.
It just keeps updating.
It
updates
really itself, yeah.
I wish they'd have done that with Internet Explorer 6, because that was the bane of a lot of web developers' lives back in the day, because people are stuck with that and they can't get out of it.
Well, we're moved on from XP, Windows XP, so I'm hoping that Internet Explorer will sort of go by the wayside. 6 will go by the wayside.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to sort of touch on here is what you've sort of figured out very quickly is that you figured out a way to make money and be able to do business even though you live in Hawaii and your clientele are on the mainland.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I'm big into life design.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So we've got to go to commercial.
Cool.
We'll be right back. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Rick Hurst, software developer and instructor. And we'll be right back. Aloha.
Aloha. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute, and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. Hi, I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Thank you for staying tuned. Today's guest is Rick Hurst. We're talking a lot about programming and some of the things that are going on in the programming world or for people that are doing web development. And during the break, Rick, you were talking about how you have a new YouTube channel called Full Stack Life.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Full Stack Life.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's an interesting term because Full Stack Life means that you're covering everything.
Almost everything.
Almost everything.
Almost
okay.
everything.
Okay. Because in the programming world, let's talk about the stack a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can start with the client side of the stack, or at the top of the stack, which is you've got your HTML and JavaScript and CSS. CSS is what you call your content style sheet. That gives the look and feel to your web page.
Yeah,
your web
it's
pages.
the skin on the skeleton.
There you go. It's the skin on the skeleton. The HTML is the meat. The JavaScript you might refer to as the muscle. Gives it all the movement.
Brain.
Or the brain.
Yeah. Or lack of, depending on how you do it.
Yes. And then, of course, then you go a little deeper in. Now you start to work with dynamic content.
Yeah.
So that means that you're storing information in a database.
Mm-hmm.
Databases, traditionally we used structured query language and structured databases such as MySQL or SQL Server. But there's another alternative to that, and that's what we sort of refer to as NoSQL data storage environments.
Yeah, it is.
That's become more popular?
I think so. I'm seeing more and more of it.
Now, are we seeing hybrids of the two? Are we seeing hybrids where you see sort of a crossover between structured data versus, and then hybriding that with non-structured data?
Very much so.
So, and a few of these are MongoDB.
MongoDB is a document-based data store. It's classed in the NoSQL kind of terminology, yeah.
What's some of the other ones that you've seen out there?
Well, there's almost a spectrum between, document-based data stores like MongoDB and things like Memcached, which is a key value store. You have Redis, which is kind of positioned
somewhere in the middle?
Yeah.
Now, a key value store is sort of like, we sort of refer to things as being stored as a dictionary, like in a dictionary
think of
object.
caching, if you hit a SQL server and get a ton of data,
right.
You don't want to keep hitting that database over and over again. You can cache that and store that with a value. So you can just say, if this value exists, we don't need to go to the database for it. We've got it. And that's caching, and that's things like Memcached, and Redis is good for that.
Now, what that's doing basically is it's storing it in memory on the computer, on the web server?
Yes.
Yes. So now, does that put a lot of demands on the web server?
Now, what you usually do is you have some sort of load balancer which splits the demand.
Okay. That sits across a farm of computers then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that's getting a little technical, but what you're trying to do is reduce the amount of load on the data servers.
Imagine you have a very busy street. You add extra lanes, it gets smoother and easier.
We can relate to that.
Yes.
Here in Hawaii. Yes, we can relate to that.
Took me a while to get here.
Yes.
I live up the road.
More lanes. So yeah. So but there's with like Google and search engines, they do a lot of data caching. Caching is a huge part of what they do. That's what makes the response so quick when you're making a request.
It just relieves the load on the server. You don't want to keep hitting the database for the same information over and over when it's unnecessary.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
So that helps to reduce the payload on this, or the load on the server.
Yeah.
Provide some improvement probably in performance as well.
And these key value stores, and even things like Redis and MongoDB document-based data stores, they can be an entire replacement for your traditional SQL type databases. And I think they're becoming more and more popular because of JavaScript.
Yes.
The reason I'm saying that is you know, when you have an object in JavaScript which has lots of information in it, you can just throw it in a database. Instead of creating tables and joining things together, you just take a document and just throw it in a bin and pull it out later. And it sounds really inefficient, but you'd be surprised how good it is.
Well, JavaScript was initially very much just a client-side language that was used in the browser. I mean, that was its sort of original adoption.
Yeah.
But today we're actually using JavaScript as server-side.
Which
in
is really
server-side
incredible stuff.
implementations.
And Node.js, which is my favorite.
Yes. Node.js gained. I remember when I was living in the San Francisco area, and you would go to meetup.com, and there were just loads of Node.js meetup groups getting together to learn Node.js.
It's fabulous.
Yeah. And that's because they were learning how to do things on the server side that had efficiencies that you weren't getting out of other programming languages.
And this is why I think full stack will work, because ultimately if you're getting really good at JavaScript, so you're moving things around on your website, and you look at the server, instead of learning PHP and Java and all these things, you can go, I can use Node.js. It's just JavaScript. I already know that, so I can transition my skill set, and now I'm doing server stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So now, what are you sort of proposing to be teaching on this new YouTube platform that you're developing, this channel?
So I'm just going to. There's so many different things I can cover, from material design to MongoDB and Amazon Web Services and JavaScript. I will find an interesting subject, maybe something that would catch somebody out that wasn't 100% sure about a particular topic, and do a short video on it, explaining some code, show them the gotchas, and show them how to get a little better performance. But it's not just for programmers. That's probably one of the messages I want to get out about this channel. It's for anyone that wants to even just learn JavaScript. Say they have an interest in building an app, they should come and check it out, because I'm going to start pushing a lot of content out there that's going to allow people to learn some new skills. Okay,
that's great. Now, there's a lot of language, there's a lot of terminology, too, that comes with learning a programming language.
Of course, yeah.
So I found, for example, I know I'm testing Friday, I'm testing for C#, which is a Microsoft programming language, in hopes of getting my teaching certification, because I really like teaching.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just, there's so much to learn with every programming language. So you can spend a lot of time studying and learning programming. The thing about JavaScript as a programming language, though, is your ability to implement fairly quickly. I mean, you're learning and able to implement quickly.
There's no compilation step. You start writing code and it's done. It's there.
And you've got environments now, tools. What are some of the tools that you have used in learning JavaScript and building out JavaScript applications? What are some of the tools that you're using?
So I use Sublime 3, which is just a normal text editor.
Sublime?
A bit like, looks
Sublime
like Word.
3. Yeah, it looks like Word, Sublime 3.
You just type away and there's your JavaScript.
Now, does it provide any kind of checking, code checking, syntax checking?
Yes, there's packages that will do that. And these are the kind of things that I would talk about in my videos.
Well, we're going to talk about them on the show.
Why not? You hear it here first, right? Yeah.
So with these tools that help you to understand if you're coding, if you're having syntax issues,
Absolutely.
if you have proper encapsulation.
Yeah, I mean, if you miss out a semicolon, I mean, these things happen all the time, especially if you're working with notepads. But it just says, no, you can't do that. And it'll pick you up with linting and this kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's all these processes like gulp and grunt, which will just run things in the background for you and make sure that you're not messing your code up and run your tests for you and this kind of stuff.
Now, organizing code. One of the big challenges, when we started coding back, I started coding in Fortran, 3 decades ago.
Bringing me back to my university days now. Oh my God.
So Fortran was a language that had go-to loops in it. You do go-to statements, and we sort of referred to that as spaghetti code. It's still out there, although it's far less used today. You don't see people writing go-to statements.
Not very often.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. We've gotten better at programming, but I guess the thing is as you're learning programming, and you've got in Fortran, we used to have to compile it, send it in, wait for the result back, help us figure out where the code. I mean, they would tell us where the error was in our code. That would take 20 minutes.
Yeah, with JavaScript, it fails instantly, which is very helpful.
Which is very helpful. Yeah, I mean, now you can write code in these environments, and I am an advocate or an evangelist for people learning programming.
Good.
I tried to force my own daughters to learn programming. Well, that was a failure. That didn't work out so well. But you know, I really wanted them to learn the concepts of logic, because one of the great things about programming is you will learn logic as you're programming. Now, one of the other challenges, of course, is organizing your code in ways that you can follow it. You know, there's a statement that says, document your code, and people will come back and says, well, the code is the documentation. Those are people that you want to strangle.
Yeah, so there's people at Twitter University are all about documentation and this kind of stuff. They're really into that. I try to make my code as self-describing as I possibly can, but I think documentation is key.
Well, it's important, and also, you know, being able to document your code, but also organizing it in a way that's meaningful. You know, and we've got part of the frameworks, model view control. The MVC design pattern, for example, is one way that programmers have started to write code in a way that has some sort of semblance of structure that makes the code more...
If you don't, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, and you know, you're going through... I mean, people write code, and you can... I've opened up files that had, you know, over 20,000 lines of code in a single file. Now, I don't know about you, but hunting down a bug in a file that's got 20,000 lines of code will make you lose your mind.
Yeah, so this is why the module patterns become quite popular now in JavaScript. You have tiny little modules that do their own self-contained little thing.
So
you bring that in when you need it.
So you write a module. It has some functionality. It's well defined, and then you bring it in.
You bring it in, and then you can use it. And
then you can use all the sort of weird and wonderful features.
Which keeps your little file nice and lightweight.
Yes. And so now, where do you go to find these modules?
There's things like, well, Bower for the JavaScripts on the front end. There's a lot of little modules you can use. On the server side, there's NPM. But ultimately, you know, it's not just finding other modules to use. It's a matter of when you write code, you should be creating your own modules so that you can reuse your own code as well.
Yes.
If you don't do that, you end up just copying and pasting from old stuff. And I think module pattern has just changed the way people structure their JavaScript. It's getting a lot more professional now.
So where do you sort of see things going from here in the programming world?
I see more document-based data stores. I see more things being done with things like MongoDB. I see Redis. I think it's a dark horse. I don't think a lot of people realize how really amazing Redis is.
Spell Redis.
R-E-D-I-S.
R-E-D-I-S.
It's very, very good. Very, very cool. I just see more and more JavaScript. Node.js for the win, I think.
Node.js meaning?
It's JavaScript on a web server.
On a web server, okay.
That's going to be very popular. I see more cloud computing, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, these kind of things.
So web services is sort of an interesting animal. And a lot of people who, in the programming, web services sort of have come into their own. Because what it does is it allows you to separate the business logic, the data store from the user interface. You've got a segregation of concern when you write a web API.
Are you referring to XML web services and SOAP?
Well, web services, SOAP, or even HTTP web services.
So I was referring to a different classification of
web services. Okay.
So Amazon Web Services is essentially a cloud-based server system. Instead of having your servers here with your database on, what you're doing is you're logging in to the cloud, okay, and you're configuring all your stuff there, configuring your load balancers, your Redis servers, your MongoDB servers, your content delivery network. Well, and it's all done on the cloud. Now,
if you're a new developer, if you've never done software development before, does this get a little overwhelming for a new person?
And so what happens is, because that's very powerful, there are companies that do platform as a service.
Okay.
And they're companies like Heroku, that's just to name one. And what they do is they leverage that system and make it very easy for you. So you just type a few things in the command line and it builds everything for you.
So it helps you get everything structured.
Yeah, and I would recommend things like that for someone starting out. You can just spin up a Heroku instance very, very easily.
And Heroku is H-I-R-O-K-U.
H-E-R-O-K-U, I believe.
H-E-R-O-K-U.
I believe so.
Something like that? Okay, Heroku.
They'll find it.
Yeah, you can find it, yeah. So, because, you know, getting somebody started, I mean, it's a big hurdle to sort of get started with programming. There's a local school that's teaching computer programming. Now they're also teaching phone application development.
Okay.
As well.
Native applications for iPhone and.
That's right. Xcode, coding and things like that. So, because for me, having come from an enterprise development environment, coming in and trying to code into these sort of new environments is even daunting for me.
Yeah, they changed really fast. I mean, they've just switched over to Swift at Apple now. So they used to use Objective-C. You can still use it, but now they're all about Swift, which to me behaves very similar to JavaScript in a lot of respects. But that's the problem with native application development. You know, if you're going to develop for the iPhone, you have to download Xcode, you have to develop in their way of doing things. Android, you have to download their Android software development kit, you're learning Java. What I love about the web and open technologies is once you develop in JavaScript, yes, it appears on the web, but you can put it across all the devices as well.
Yes, yes. Well, Swift is actually very interesting because this is just a relatively new platform, right?
Yes, new language.
New language. I'm Chris Lethem. We're going to go to commercial. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Rick Hurst, a software developer from the UK, and he's here, and we're having a great chat. It's very techy, so we'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
And we're live. Hi, I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Rick Hurst. We're talking about programming in the full stack.
We are.
Rick has a new YouTube channel called Full Stack Life. You seem very excited about this.
I am very excited about it, actually.
Yes. Now, you've been doing, how long have you been programming?
A very long
I know
time.
That's a painful question.
It's like, how old am I? Yeah, I've been programming since, I did engineering at university back when I was like 18. I've just been doing programming forever. So.
Yes. And you moved to Hawaii a few months ago. Now, what's been your experience here in Hawaii with programming, with continuing on to do with what you're doing? Have you sort of started to engage some of the local development?
I haven't done that because I kind of designed it this way. I got into a situation where I wasn't needing to be physically present to help people code. And that took a lot of mastery because I spent so much time trying to do online training and just couldn't get it right, couldn't get the interactivity, couldn't get the engagement, and it was very difficult. And we worked at it very hard, me and the guys that used to do this back in San Francisco. And then once I really nailed it, then I was in a position to say, okay, now I can choose to live where I want to live. So it was a life design choice.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Is this something that would be appealing to other people who want to teach? Somebody like me, okay,
sure.
Like I wanted to teach.
For sure.
Okay, so is there any trade secrets here, or can you share a little bit about how you sort of
I want as many people
out?
teaching software as possible. So yeah, use things like Codio and Cloud9, and these are platforms you can go online and actually code, and other people can see you in real time, and you can collaborate. These kind of platforms are amazing. Things like version control with Git and GitHub allows you to collaborate code. I'm seeing more and more remote work.
So not only can you use this as a platform for teaching, but you can also use it as a platform for collaborating on your code.
Absolutely.
Now, do you still sort of do things like code checking with other developers? Like you check each other's code?
Yeah, peer review.
Yeah,
very,
peer
very
review.
helpful to do that. Yes, for sure.
And you're able to do that?
Yeah, and you would do that with something like GitHub or Git or whichever version control system you want to use.
Okay. Now, and you can implement this remotely. It doesn't require that you be on site.
That's correct.
Now, one of the challenges, of course, is that if you're looking for work in Hawaii and you're looking for work as a developer, and we know that Hawaii does not pay all that well when it comes to software development, and you want to be able to work for companies on the mainland,
Yes.
they're very concerned about having you, Johnny on the spot, working
Yeah, they are.
in their office.
I'm seeing it turning a corner, but it's still there. I mean, even if you have someone very good that is remote, there's always that thought in the back of the boss's mind, are they not working, this kind of stuff. But you're seeing more and more accountability, because when you're working with a version control system, it just means you're submitting your code on a regular basis, and they can see, oh, this guy's here. And it's the same as them seeing you come in.
And they can see your code changes.
They can see that you're actually doing something.
Right.
And so there is no easy right. You know, in the past you would have said, oh, we work remotely, I'm working remotely, and you're off at the beach.
That's right.
Now, if you're working remotely, if you're not submitting code commits, they're like, you are at the beach.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
so it's accountable.
Well, there's even the ability to have them see your computer screen and see you working live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So with these types of technologies available, what can we be doing to maybe get a little bit more latitude from organizations when it comes to hiring and working with developers who aren't living or able to work on the spot?
I'd say education is the key. Getting people clued up on working with things like version control systems like Git, understanding the full stack so that a company that has a particular need for, say, Redis or Mongo, this guy can go, oh, I know enough about that to kind of really swat up and get that interview and get that job on MongoDB because they're learning enough. So I would get people skilled up. Just by creating infrastructure in Hawaii isn't necessarily going to help, because what's going to happen is you're going to have people on San Francisco that want to come to Hawaii and have a nice lifestyle and use their skills and work remotely. What you really want to do is train people in Hawaii so they can have skills export.
And then be able to export those skills, even
Not
though
themselves.
they're not themselves, but their skills.
Correct.
Right. Now, isn't that sort of having your cake and eating it too?
Yeah, but people can learn this stuff. You don't need to go and have a degree anymore.
Right.
It's not like that. I would encourage anybody that's thinking, I'd like to be a programmer, I want to get out of my dead-end job, go to my YouTube channel. I'm going to train you as much as I can in the time I got.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one out there teaching stuff.
Well, no, there's lots of people teaching stuff.
Really good
and here's
teachers out
the great thing, it's generally free.
Yeah, well, mine's all free. And even if you're buying a book, I mean, it's $30. What's that? A few Coca-Colas. Just do it.
Right. Yeah, I have a library of books. I can't tell you how many of them I've actually read.
At least you have them. You have them. Instead of DVDs of films, you're actually doing them. That's great. That's why you're doing your C# thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I can tell you that a lot of my training is video-based training.
Yeah.
You know, the only challenge with video-based training, now, I think you have to do both. Because the problem with video-based training is if you have an instructor who has a sort of a drone voice, it's very easy to fall asleep.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the only way that you can do video training is you stick your hand in a bucket of ice. You know, that's the only way to stay awake.
No joke, I have fallen asleep to tech videos before.
I do it. I do it
done
daily.
I try and make my full stack life not only interesting and short and real, with real world analogies, which I think is missing. A lot of people say, this variable goes here. I'm like, no, I don't do that. I use real analogies, keep it real, keep it short and interesting. I'm trying to get people excited about doing coding, so they keep wanting to do more, not more than with technicalities.
Well, it's, you know, the thing about programming is that when you, and I see programming as a tool to solve complex business problems.
Sure.
It's a way to, you know, and of course we're using programming in everything from biotechnology. I mean, we've mapped the genome. That was done with technology. We use this tool of technology, and it gives us leverage to solve problems that in the history of humanity we have never been able to solve. And that's very powerful.
That's amazing.
You know, I have a daughter who's studying neuroscience. You know, she's off now going to get her master's degree in neuroscience pretty soon. And I think to myself, you know, if she could only code, you know, how much better, or, you know, how much more power she would have in taking what she's learning and using it in some significant way, you know.
Talking of women in code, I think we should have more women in code.
I absolutely agree with you. There's nothing worse than coding with nothing but guys, you know.
I tell you, Silicon Valley needs a big influx of girls.
Yes, we need an injective.
There's too much male testosterone over there.
And the thing is, what I guess a lot of women don't realize, and I don't know if it's because they think it's a man's club, But it's an extremely collaborative environment.
Absolutely. It's very well. I mean, you go and try and get an interview in Silicon Valley. I mean, if they put all the resumes down here and they're all equal and one's a girl, the girl's going to get it. I'm telling you now. They will always want girls. So there's no barrier to say, oh, we're women, we can't do this. Nonsense. You've got as much chance, if not better, than anyone else going in.
That's right. So girls, you hear that, right?
Go for it.
You have every opportunity. In fact, you have a bit of an advantage if you decide that you wanted to go into computer programming.
Companies won't admit that, but
yes. Well, and the pay is quite good.
Pay's excellent.
Pay is excellent. And if we can figure out a way that we can export our skill set.
Without exporting our people.
Without exporting our people. I mean, and I'm a bit selfish about this because I raised 2 daughters here. And I would love nothing more than to have my daughters come back to Hawaii. So someday they get married and I have children and I can spoil them and then give them back. Yeah. I don't want to have to go to the mainland to spoil my kids. I'd much rather be able to spoil them from here, my grandkids, than spoil them from here. Yeah. So I'm a bit selfish about that agenda. I think it's a wonderful agenda. And the thing about that too is that every programming job, a job in the technology space, has a higher multiple of creating other jobs.
Yeah, that's actually a real key issue. And that's what I want to encourage people that, go into my channel, because I want people that say, I've got an idea for an app or a website. I want them just to start a business, just try. Because if it starts to become successful, you're creating jobs.
Yes, and you're creating a quality lifestyle for yourself.
Yeah, and use a Silicon Valley analogy. You could be changing the world.
Yes.
But look, you can create apps that actually significantly change things.
Well, there's just so many. Even I was watching TV today. They have now figured out how to use the herpes virus to kill skin cancer.
Crazy.
And it's crazy, but these are the things that technology is allowing us to do, and it is absolutely fabulous. We live in and the technological advances today are parabolic. I mean, it used to be that new opportunities sort of came like this over time, but today it's just parabolic.
It used to be you had to go to university. My father was an engineer. He says, you got to go to university, got an engineering degree. So yeah, I did all that, but really it doesn't stand me in any good stead. I was at Silicon Valley with some programmers who were like so much better than me at the time, and they dropped out of school. You can learn this stuff. Just go onto YouTube, just go onto Udemy and all these places to access information. It's essentially free. Okay, so a course might cost you $10 or a book might cost you $30. Just invest. Just do it. You can change your life.
Yes. Well, Rick, this has been great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Because you and I both sort of evangelize this whole the whole thing with computer programming and software development and realizing that companies throughout the world today are having to inject technology into these companies to survive and to thrive. And it is really the imperative. And technology is going to be your friend or your enemy, or maybe your frenemy. I don't know. It can be your frenemy at times. But it was great having you on the show. And I know it was sort of last minute to get you to come on the show, but so thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
And so I guess we'll wrap it up. My name is Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Our guest today was Rick Hurst, talking about the weird and wonderful world of computer programming and software development. Please check out Rick's YouTube channel, Full Stack Life. I'm sure he'll have some great stuff on there for you and help you get started in the exciting world of computer programming and software development. Thanks again, Rick.
Thank you.
Aloha.